Picture a tent zipped shut in the dark, somewhere far from streetlights and walls. Inside, a person is asleep, breathing slow, completely unaware of the night outside. Their eyes are closed, their muscles are loose, and their senses have mostly checked out. If something moved close enough to touch the tent, they would not know until it was too late. Somewhere nearby, in the trees or along a ridge, something else is awake. A wolf or mountain lion may be moving through the dark, while a bear searches for food. It may already know a person is close, long before that person stirs. It might have caught a strand of scent drifting through camp, or the smell of food packed away. It might have heard breathing, or the soft creak of nylon shifting in the wind. It may know roughly where the person is, while detecting almost no movement or immediate response. On paper, this looks like the easiest meal an animal could ask for. A slow-moving primate, flat on its back, unaware of the danger a few meters away. And yet, across countless nights outdoors, encounters like this rarely become predatory attacks. Most end quietly, with the animal leaving before the person even knows it was there. So here is the real puzzle worth asking. If a sleeping human looks this defenseless, why do so many predators simply walk away? But the obvious answer, that the animal simply missed its chance, hides a deeper question. There is a difference between detecting vulnerability and deciding that vulnerability is worth exploiting. Those two things sound similar, but they are not the same thing at all. Before explaining why most predators do not attack, we need something more basic first. What actually has to happen inside an animal's behavior before a hunt even begins? An animal can notice a human from a distance and still choose not to come any closer. It might register that something living is nearby, breathing, mostly still, faintly warm. It might pick up the smell of a person or the smell of food stored close by. None of that, by itself, means a hunt is about to begin. Detecting something is only the first step in a much longer chain of decisions. Even recognizing that something could technically be eaten does not mean it will be selected as prey. Think of hunting less as one switch flipping, and more as a sequence that can stop at several points. None of this happens as a spoken debate inside the animal's head. There is no inner voice weighing pros and cons the way a person might plan a decision. But its behavior reflects several pressures operating at once. Is this target familiar? And does its behavior match something the animal has hunted before? Can it be approached, caught, and controlled without wasting too much energy? Is it truly alone, or could nearby humans respond? Is there a more familiar and less risky option nearby? An attack is never free. It costs energy that has to be earned back later. It risks an injury that could slow the animal down for weeks, or end its hunting career. It can also trigger a response from other animals or nearby humans. So an animal's hunting behavior is shaped by more than hunger and opportunity in the moment. It is shaped by risk, memory, environment, and whatever alternatives happen to be available. A predator can notice your vulnerability and still fail to treat you as practical prey. That single idea explains sleeping humans better than almost anything else in this video. To understand why, we need to look at what actually turns a living thing into recognized prey. Most predators are not working from a fixed checklist stored somewhere in their brain. There is no single formula that works the same way for every hunting species on Earth. A mountain lion, a wolf, and a bear do not evaluate food or risk in identical ways. A big cat may rely on ambush, a wolf on pursuit, while a bear may simply be investigating an odor. So this explanation is a shared behavioral framework, not a universal rule for every species. Still, it helps to imagine a loose prey pattern built from instinct, experience, and sensory cues. It is an explanatory model, not a literal checklist hidden inside the brain. It is shaped by scent, size, body proportions, and the way a target tends to move. It is also shaped by how predictable similar targets have been in past encounters. And it reflects how easily a target can be caught, controlled, and converted into a meal. For many predators, a hunt is more than a single lunge from hiding. It may involve noticing, focusing attention, approaching, testing a response, and only then committing. Some predators stalk quietly for a long stretch. Others rely on a short, explosive rush. Different species use different sequences, but familiar cues often help keep that sequence moving. Scent that smells like known prey, a silhouette that fits a known shape, movement that follows a predictable pattern the animal has hunted successfully before. Imagine three things resting at the edge of a forest at dusk: a deer, lying down and resting quietly in the open grass; a person, zipped inside a sleeping bag near a small camp; a large backpack, sitting upright against a tree nearby. To a human observer, the sleeping person is clearly the most vulnerable of the three. But to a predator that specializes in hunting deer, the comparison looks completely different. The deer matches familiar signals shaped by instinct and successful experience. The sleeping human presents a less familiar shape and a less predictable response. The backpack, meanwhile, is doing an excellent job of not looking edible. The comparison is not suggesting that a predator confuses a person with luggage. It shows that only the deer fits the predator's familiar hunting pattern cleanly. Vulnerability describes the condition of the target, lying still and unaware. Prey recognition describes something else: the relationship between that target and the animal watching it. Those two ideas get confused constantly, and untangling them is the key to this whole question. And in that relationship, a human being rarely fits as cleanly as we might assume. Strip away the tent, sleeping bag, and campsite for a moment. Even while lying down, a human body differs from the four-legged prey many predators know best. Long limbs, broad shoulders, hands, and an unusual resting posture create a less familiar silhouette. Human scent, shaped by skin, sweat, diet, clothing, and manufactured materials, adds another unusual signal. And when suddenly awakened, a person may not react like a rabbit freezing or a deer fleeing along a familiar path. A human can shout, rise upright, wave both arms, grab an object, or strike back. None of those reactions guarantees safety, but all of them make the encounter harder to predict. None of this means every predator consciously understands all these details. It means a human may fit less neatly into the hunting patterns many predators use. Now, add the layer of a campsite around that already unfamiliar shape. A tent, a rustling sleeping bag, and manufactured gear make the scene even harder to classify. To us, it is shelter. To an animal, it may be a crinkling geometric mystery. None of this is decisive alone, but each detail adds hesitation to an already unusual target. And scent complicates the picture further because it sends two very different messages at once. The smell of a person in unfamiliar gear may raise caution rather than appetite. It may produce wary investigation without producing a predatory decision. But the smell of food is a separate signal, and it does not play by the same rules. Food odors can pull in bears, opportunistic feeders, and animals that have learned campsites mean easy calories. A campsite can therefore broadcast two competing messages into the night. Something unfamiliar and possibly risky is present, but easy calories may be present as well. Which signal wins depends heavily on the species, the individual animal, and what that animal has learned before. That conflict may draw an animal closer without making the sleeping person its intended prey. Whether a hunt actually continues depends on something else: how that target behaves once spotted. For many visually oriented predators, movement is a powerful cue within the hunting sequence. A running target can intensify attention and, under the right conditions, trigger pursuit. A target that separates from a group may also appear easier to approach. A stumble, limp, or erratic escape can advertise weakness to an attentive hunter. Together, those cues can make familiar prey more attractive in the moment. A sleeping human does none of these familiar things. They do not bolt, and they do not flee in a panicked, predictable direction. They do not provide the running sequence that often helps organize a chase. But stillness is not a hiding spell, and it does not make a person invisible or untouchable. Predators can still attack targets that are resting, injured, or caught completely off guard. Ambush hunters, in particular, specialize in exactly this kind of surprise. So staying still removes some triggering cues, but it is not a guaranteed layer of safety. Something else may matter even more than motion alone: predictability. A deer can often outrun a human with no real effort at all, but many predators are tuned, through instinct and experience, to the escape patterns of familiar prey. That familiarity can help them anticipate turns, isolate a target, or time an ambush. A sleeping person might be physically easier to reach in the first few seconds of an encounter. But what happens after they wake up is far less predictable to any watching animal. A startled human might freeze, shout, swing an arm, or stand and charge forward. Those reactions may not match a pattern the predator has handled successfully before. Easy to reach is not the same thing as easy to control. The ability to control a target is often one important part of whether an attack succeeds. That uncertainty does not come only from the moment itself. It is also shaped by something much larger: a long, uneven history between our species and theirs. On paper, a single human is not an especially intimidating animal. We are slower than most predators, and we carry no natural claws, fangs, or thick defensive hide. Our raw physical strength is unremarkable next to a wolf, a bear, or a big cat. But many wild animals encounter humans alongside groups, vehicles, lights, dogs, noise, or tools. Humans cooperate in groups, use tools, throw objects from a distance, and make loud, disruptive noise. We bring light into darkness and produce sudden sounds that can disrupt an approach. We may respond collectively, and encounters with people can escalate quickly. A sleeping person is not actively using any of these advantages in the moment. But an animal's caution is not always built only from what is happening right now. It can be shaped by direct personal experience, especially painful or startling encounters. An animal chased off, shouted at, or hurt near people often learns to keep its distance. In some social species, caution may also spread through observation. Young animals may learn to avoid people by watching how experienced adults respond. This is not a universal, hardwired fear of humans. It is a learned association that varies across species and individuals. Behavioral research offers measurable evidence that many mammals treat human presence as a source of risk. A 2018 meta-analysis covering 62 mammal species across 6 continents found a broad pattern. Near human activity, many species became more nocturnal, reducing their overlap with people. One California playback experiment showed a more immediate response in mountain lions. Researchers played human voices near the cat's kill sites and used frog calls as a comparison. The mountain lions fled more often from human voices and were slower to return. Their feeding time at those sites also fell sharply after the human voice playback. These studies did not test sleeping campers directly, but they show that human signals alone can alter how wild animals move, feed, and assess risk. The evidence supports general caution, not a claim that every predator fears every sleeping human. That caution is real, but it is not an unbreakable rule. It would be misleading to end this story with total reassurance. Predatory attacks on sleeping humans do happen, even if they remain rare events overall. When they occur, they are often linked to specific circumstances, not a sudden change in species-wide behavior. Severe hunger, illness, old age, or an injury that limits normal hunting can shift an animal's choices. The loss of natural prey in an area can push some animals toward far riskier decisions. Other attacks may look predatory from a distance but begin as defense. An animal may be startled, cornered, guarding young, or protecting a food source. In those cases, the person is being treated as a threat to drive away, not as prey to consume. Around campsites, another process can develop that is centered on food rather than human bodies. Some animals learn, over repeated encounters, that campsites, coolers, and trash reliably contain food. Once that connection is learned well enough, hunger and habit can outweigh normal caution around people. Wildlife managers have documented this pattern in black bears around heavily visited areas. Bears that repeatedly obtain human food become food conditioned, gradually losing the wariness that once kept them away. Food conditioning can make an animal approach tents and campsites more boldly than it otherwise would. And ordinary individual variation still matters. Some species, populations, and individual animals are bolder, more habituated, or more desperate than others. None of this calls for panic, but it does require honest caution. Being an unlikely target is not the same thing as being an impossible one. The practical lesson is not that sleeping outdoors is automatically safe. Risk rises when wildlife learns to associate camps, tents, or people with food. Securing food and scented items removes one powerful reason for animals to approach. Exact precautions vary by species and location, so local wildlife guidance still matters. This explanation is not a rule telling you to stay still, run, or fight during an encounter. The correct response depends on the species, distance, behavior, and local guidance. Never approach or feed wildlife, even with the best of intentions. What stands out most here is not that humans are somehow untouchable. It is that two very different nervous systems may be reading the very same encounter in two very different ways. Return for a moment to that tent in the dark. A twig snaps somewhere close outside, and the mind inside reacts instantly. It imagines something watching, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. It imagines every small sound growing closer, more deliberate, more certain. That fear is not irrational, even if nothing outside is actually hunting. For much of human evolution, darkness could hide danger, and unexplained sounds could demand immediate attention. Losing the ability to see clearly once meant losing the ability to react in time. So the brain fills in the darkness with the worst-case story it can imagine. Now shift to the animal standing somewhere just beyond the firelight. It is not reasoning in sentences, but its behavior reflects a rapid assessment. The scent, shape, number of nearby humans, available food, and possible response all matter. Each cue can move the encounter toward approach, retreat, defense, or predation. Neither creature is having a calm, rational internal debate. Both are running fast, largely unconscious evaluations shaped by instinct, learning, and memory. The person in the tent fears what they cannot see or predict in the dark. The animal outside is cautious about a shape it cannot fully classify or predict either. Both nervous systems are gathering scattered signals and predicting what might happen next. Both are trying to avoid a mistake that could become costly in seconds. Most encounters in the wild do not end with a predator closing in or a human fighting back. Often, two cautious creatures independently avoid a conflict that neither needs. That quiet, mutual hesitation is a large part of why the person in that tent wakes up the next morning. The vulnerability they felt in the dark was real, but it was never the only thing determining what happened next. So why don't more predators see a sleeping human as easy prey? Not because they cannot detect us, and not because they cannot tell we are vulnerable. The real answer sits one layer deeper than that. Noticing a living creature is not the same as classifying it as prey. And classifying something as edible is not the same as choosing to hunt it. A sleeping human often fails to match the scent, shape, and behavior patterns many predators already know how to hunt. Our reactions can be hard to predict, and tents, gear, odor, noise, and nearby people add more risk signals. For an animal that survives by avoiding costly mistakes, that uncertainty matters. It would be inaccurate to say predators never see humans as prey. In rare specific circumstances, some do. It is more accurate to say sleeping humans often fail to look familiar, predictable, and low risk enough to be selected. Step back further, and something larger comes into view. Nature rarely sorts living things into simple categories of strong, weak, hunter, and hunted. Predatory behavior is shaped by recognition, experience, prediction, opportunity, and acceptable risk. A creature can be physically weak, yet still be difficult to classify, predict, or control. For a predator facing possible injury, unfamiliarity can matter more than apparent weakness. Predators do not simply hunt weakness. They prefer prey they can recognize, predict, and attack at acceptable risk. The animal beyond the edge of your camp may know exactly where you are, but it does not necessarily see an easy meal. It may see an unfamiliar animal, an unpredictable reaction, and an attack that could go wrong. And in the wild, uncertainty does not always begin a hunt. Sometimes, it ends one before it starts.